Можемо починати.
Let us start. Good morning. It's very good to see you all here for our discussion about privatization, future steps and stages in privatization, and that aid that comes to privatization projects from the USAID supported projects. I would like to present participants of our today's discussion. Mr. Joseph Pennington, Executive Head of Diplomatic Mission of the US to Ukraine, and Mr. Dmytro Sennychenko, Head of the State Property Fund. And Mr. Sennychenko is the first to speak. Good morning. Privatization is actually at the same time both involvement of costs to the state budget and creation of new jobs. And yesterday at the Council of Reforms under the President of Ukraine, the President mentioned that we have to speed up privatization and involve more investments to the Ukrainian economy. And we are now presenting the project which we have now presenting the law which will allow us to increase the amounts of investments, but even without that law, we now, according to legislation, can do privatization honestly and transparently. What does privatization actually mean? It actually means that we transfer inefficient assets to private hands, and in order for these assets to work efficiently, now several hundreds of public agencies administer more than 400 different public companies, enterprises, which generated 170 billion of losses during last year only. And that's why the President has set the task to transfer all those inefficient assets which bring losses to the national budget to the private hands, and thus to increase the efficiency in the economy, or together with the USAID, and we hope to be able to do this. But actually, USAID assistance means that the people of the United States pay their taxes to provide this assistance, and we have to show that we appreciate this and use this money efficiently. Mr. Eleiko will describe how Ukrainian businessmen, those who have money for investments, could become a good source for the investments into this privatization, because some Ukrainian businessmen are afraid to invest, to keep money in Ukrainian banks, etc. So with this, I would like to thank to the people of the United States and to the government of the United States, who provided very important assistance to our agency, to the Ukrainian Property Fund, State Property Fund, in creating the framework, the system of transparent procedure for the privatization. So we wanted to create transparent tools for the bidding in course of privatization. And this is extremely important. There is a general opinion that in previous years, many stages of privatization had a big corruption component, and all the ads about available privatization objects was printed in newspaper, which had a circulation of something like 400,000 copies, which was extremely inefficient. So that's why, and we introduced new procedure and new tool. So with thanks to Mr. Pennington, to USAID, I'm giving the floor to Mr. Eleiko, who will describe this tool in more details. Thank you, Mr. Sennychenko. The objective of that tool of the procedure is to involve as much investment to Ukrainian economy as possible, and thus to provide efficient information for potential investments in course of bidding. So first we have to ensure that we present full and transparent information about the object of privatization, and that we ensure the transparent collection of bids. So this year we have launched new principles for the disclaimer of disclosure of information. That is, we disclose not only the location of the object, but also all the financial statements for this object, and thus, all potential stakeholders can look at that data. That data were initially collected in course of the pilot project in a very simplified virtual data room, and actually we had fulfilled around 1,000 of auctions of bids, bidding processes, and we have noticed that the competition had grown up to 3.5 participants per one object, and this reflects increasing interest, growing efficiency, etc. Within this first 6 months, we were able to provide more than 500 million hryvnia to the national budget due to this privatization process, and moreover, this was done via absolutely transparent bidding on our platform. We are very grateful to the U.S. government and USAID for assistance in creating that virtual data rooms, because this is actually introduction of the best international instruments, best international practice into Ukrainian reality, and this allowed us to create access to this virtual data room free of charge for all potential investors who might be interested in investing into public property objects which are under management of the state property fund, and the only thing which potential investor has to do, this is to sign the confidentiality agreement with our platform and thus get access to the virtual data room and to all the data that are collected in that virtual data room. Currently, we're working on preparation of the Hotel Dnipro privatization, and the bidding rounds will take place on July 15. And preparing this object for privatization, we had to do a lot of financial audits and present it in the most accessible form, and the full presentation of financial details would allow investors to make well-informed decisions. Baker McKenzie and data engineering and Cushman and Wakefield these were companies who were involved to preparation of very detailed information about this object for potential investors with the aim to diminish risks because non-transparency creates preconditions for corruption and allows to raise prices at the auctions. Thus, transparent procedure allows us to enroll a broader circle of investors. With this, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Joseph Pennington.
For inviting me here this morning to join you. Very happy to be here this morning for the kickoff of the privatization of the Dnipro Hotel. In 2 weeks, as you know, the hotel will be auctioned off through Prozoro.sale to a new private owner, where we hope it will take on a new life. This is a huge accomplishment to get to this point in the process, and Dmytro and his team at the State Property Fund deserve incredible amounts of credit for getting us here, and we commend them here today. But even as we celebrate this specific accomplishment, we also have to keep in mind the bigger picture with regard to privatization, because this is really the beginning, not the end, of the work to make Ukraine's economy more competitive and more attractive to investors. So I thought that I would use today's occasion to talk about a little bit more than the Dnipro Hotel, which is important, but about why privatization in general is really important to Ukraine's future prospects, future economy, and how this specific case demonstrates the benefits of privatization. Because privatization is not an end in itself, and that's why we support it through USAID. Privatization is a tool that, if used smartly and transparently, has the potential to attract investment, boost economic growth, increase confidence in the government, all of which I would argue are more critical now than ever before. But let me start with the process, because in this case, the how we got here and how this process is going forward is extremely important for both Ukrainians and for the confidence of investors. So, to To effectively build Ukraine's self-reliance, privatization needs to happen transparently. And I think both Taras and Dmytro mentioned that same word, but we can't stress this too much. Too many times, Ukrainians have watched privatization attempts fail or even backfire because things happen behind closed doors. And this has made investors very cautious, very wary of doing business in Ukraine. And this is why the US government support for privatization, for state-owned enterprise reform, focuses on transparency. We have helped standardize processes, including steps such as preparing the appropriate due diligence materials and ensuring reliable access to these materials and documentation. These are basic requirements for potential investors. Having these key documents about the Dnipro Hotel housed in the virtual data room ensures that they are equally accessible by all interested investors. And the auction will be conducted transparently on the prozoro.sale electronic platform. I understand this auction is already generating a lot of buzz, and I'm proud to say that our work with the Dnipro Hotel shows that a transparent process does attract potential investors. I would also say that these investors bring a lot of value to the table. Private investment in state-owned assets is proven to increase efficiency and transparency, drive modernization, and help reduce corruption. In private hands, I am confident that the Dnipro Hotel will become a revitalized tourist destination and a landmark of Kyiv's beautiful downtown. The results of credible privatization efforts such as the Dnipro Hotel are hard to overstate. A transparent process will ultimately raise more money for the Ukrainian people, will increase Ukrainians' trust in their government, and increase investors' confidence in the rule of law in Ukraine. Investment will in turn create sustainable employment opportunities and rejuvenate stagnant assets. And most importantly, in the long run, the investment attracted by privatization will boost economic growth, which Ukraine needs now more than ever before. When President Zelensky was elected, he laid out an ambitious economic reform agenda. But even he couldn't predict that a global pandemic would upset even the best laid plans. So now is the time for Ukraine to use every tool available to it to ensure a swift economic recovery from this unforeseen crisis. Reforming Ukraine's more than 3,000 state-owned enterprises and privatizing them where appropriate is an excellent place to start. The Dnipro Hotel privatization shows the government's commitment to a transparent process, demonstrates the benefits of attracting private investment to Ukraine's numerous state-owned assets. The US government is proud to be supporting this process. Again, very pleased to be here today to highlight the benefits of privatization and this specific case, which is coming to a conclusion in a couple of weeks. And it's a very exciting day for all of us here. Thank you again for allowing me to participate.
Дякую. І зараз в двох словах ми хочемо розказати вам ще
Thank you very much. And a couple of words additionally about the operational features of the database. Of the data room, how it allows for the investors to access this data. For example, we have 1 gigabyte of scanned materials about Dnipro Hotel in our virtual data room. With this, I'm happy to give the floor to Mr. Vitalii Dyshlovyi, head of the marketing department from the State Property Fund. This is a presentation about information disclosure via virtual data rooms. the data rooms are used for everywhere in the world in process of mergers, acquisitions, privatizations, etc. The purpose is to save investors time and to allow free access to data. Another objective is to remove corruption in course of data delivery. Also, the purpose is to increase transparency of privatization process, and the next purpose is to increase competition in course of bidding process and increase the budget revenues. As Taras Eleiko mentioned, earlier this year we had launched pilot testing of the virtual data room. Actually, it is very easy to register on this platform via your email account. Here you can find information about all the objects offered for privatization. On the other hand, we have to ensure confidentiality of the provided data. That's why we had introduced this new platform, investroom.sp4u.gov.ua, where we post all the documents that confirm the ownership, financial documents, legal documents, and prepare, of course, teasers and presentations. All the documentation is well structured and posted according to a specific algorithm. There you also can find the list of objects offered for privatization in nearest future. How to get access? First you go to the privatization.gov.ua website, where you download your application form and agreement. You fill in that forms and forward it to the state property fund, and then later you will receive invitation to join the platform in your email box. Here on this slide you see the case of the Hotel Dnipro folder in this virtual data room. There's a full amount of the volume of virtual space allows us to present materials about all the objects offered for privatization. Also, we can trace back who visited the data room, and also the 4 types of audits and documentation prepared about the Dnipro Hotel, financial information, financial statements, etc. Also, we have virtual, not only virtual, but also physical data rooms. That is, you can come physically to the FDMI and sign necessary documents. Also, you can find additional information about all the objects, www.privatization.gov.ua, and on Prozoro sale. And with this, I invite you to take part in this privatization process. I would like to add that we requested for all the materials, all the outputs of the audits from the Dnipro hotel. This is from the Dnipro hotel, which earlier belonged to the presidential administration, and President Zelensky decided to get rid of it and to offered it for privatization, and moreover, it brings only 280,000 hryvnia per year, which means actually 23,000 hryvnia per month, and moreover they have around 4 million hryvnia of debts. So it is very important to privatize such inefficient objects, and what you can see on the website of FDMI in our virtual data room, you will see the technical review, then financial statement. Baker McKenzie had carried out legal audit and in order to know the deficiencies which this property object has, because many people can see that there is a good object, but not so many people understand that there are some hidden deficiencies. So except for social objects, military objects, and other strategic objects, we have to offer all other inefficient state enterprises, companies, and properties for privatization. This year we have got rather impressive revenues to the national budget, but it's not the biggest our achievement. Our purpose is to show, to prove that Ukrainian privatization is possible, and bigger share of all the investors in our privatization this year were Ukrainian investors, and this allowed us to demonstrate that privatization is possible, that these are Ukrainian businesses who win from it, and that it could be transparent. You just have to go to privatization.gov.ua and you will find good bulk of information. As of now, we have got 12 different objects from Ukraine Spirits concern company, which are designed for privatization. We also have some brownfield objects where they have necessary infrastructure which could easily be transformed for some sort of production. Like processing industry for agriculture. That's why we are ready to invite investors to participate in transparent bidding rounds. On our website. I hope that I have convinced you that the process now is transparent, and now we are ready to answer the questions which potentially can come from the internet. There are no questions as of now. Thank you to all participants for participation. We are currently moving gradually to transparent privatization, which will minimize the bureaucratic barriers for all potential participants, and we will try to offer for privatization very interesting objects, so I invite you to participate.